welcome to the agenda with me, Lasha Kingsley in Douala, Cameroon. On today's edition of the program, we are talking climate change and innovative volunteerism. And joining us on the program is a climate change and development policy expert and author of the book, Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism. Dr. Richard Munang talks to the agenda. Dr. Richard Munang in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Kingsley, for having me. I appreciate it.
This is the very first time we are having you on the program, and a million viewers across the African continent may be discovering you for the very first time. So who is Dr. Richard Munang?
Let me first of all start by thanking you again and to all the viewers who are tuned in. I am Richard Munang, and I am an environment and climate action development policy expert, and my interest is pretty much on looking at how environment can actually become a solution to the challenges that we face across the entire African continent today, challenges of food insecurity, challenges of youth unemployment, and more so using a different approach to development that can inspire people to be able to use their inner talents to address challenges from a perspective that benefits the communities and put more money and more food on the table.
Yeah, Doctor, you are embarking on a journey which you believe so much that will help combat climate change in the African continent. You call it innovative volunteerism. Can you help me and the million viewers who are watching us at this time to understand the concept or your concept, what you are embarking on the journey?
If you look across the entire African continent today, it's sometimes portrayed as a continent in adversity, and rightly so. If you look from food insecurity, we have 257 million citizens who go to bed hungry each and every night. We have 620 million citizens who are energy impoverished, and each and every year we have over 12 million young people who graduate and get into the labor market seeking for jobs that they are not actually there. So when you look at these challenges compounded year after year, and then on top of this climate change that is manifesting in form of droughts and floods and cyclones, we see it every day, then you tend to ask the question, what can be done? What has not been done? And what has been the missing equation has been putting people at the center of development. What has been the missing equation is prioritizing sometimes material rather than focusing on people's ability to use their talents, to use their skills, to tap into their passion, to be able to become part of transformational development. And so the idea of innovative volunteerism is premised in these few words of tapping into everyone's ability, their talents, their skills, so that at least they can use what they have, not what they hope to have.
Yeah.
What they have, to then use that to turn a challenge into an opportunity. And that is something that has been missing for quite a very long time. Because let's face it, when you look across, like I have mentioned, if you take Cameroon, for example, Cameroon actually do not lack policies that are needed. Cameroon was among the first African countries to submit what is called climate action plans, plans that can help the country address drought, address floods, help crop failure to be addressed. And these plans are called nationally determined contributions. But also break it down so that our viewers can understand these are actions that the country is supposed to take to ensure that the changing climate that we're facing today can actually be reduced. Those plans were submitted to what is called the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So what's the point here? What I'm trying to say is that there is no absence of policy across every African continent, and Cameroon inclusive. What is needed then is to start to look at how can we, the citizens, turn those policies into opportunities. And that's where innovative volunteerism takes center stage.
You've been touring the 54 African countries on this move. When For the past years that you've been working in this country, what is missing according to you, your observation?
I will start by, first of all, talking about what is present. And I have alluded to this upfront that there is no absence of policies across the entire African continent. Policy after policy. And sometimes Africa is jokingly even called a continent, a cemetery for policy. So we have the policies, and that needs to be applauded. What has been missing is the gap between policy and implementation, the implementation and the innovative approaches that are needed to turn those policies into actions that can help a mother in a village put food on the table, that can help a young person actually turn his or her skill and turn a challenge into an opportunity. And the biggest gap has been the passion gap. People have not been inspired to see themselves as the solutions to the challenges we face, that I do not have to wait for government alone to do what I need to do, that I need to start playing my own role so that at least I can then generate something and then go to government, ask the government to add more opportunities to building on what we have done, showing that it can work. So there has been that missing link between policy implementation, and the biggest link has been that lack of passion, and more so putting citizens at the center of development. Because what we are seeing is that citizens look up to government for solutions, whereas in reality, it is the citizens that devise solutions. When we look across the continent today, the young people are using what they have, not waiting for what they don't have to turn challenges to opportunities. So tapping to those young people's energy, to the citizens' energy, can be the driving force that can start to address Africa's challenges. But that has been the missing link, and that has been a very big problem that we are trying to address through this.
I saw some of the work that we have done especially in East Africa, where you engage youths in rural areas, and you came up with solar panel plants and other innovations to help the young people, drive growth, as you rightly put it.
Absolutely. One of the aspects, and thank you for bringing this up, is that sometimes what we have seen in the continent and what we still see today is that the solutions to the challenges that Africa faces needs to come from elsewhere. Not true. The solutions needs to be tailored to the realities and to the context in which we are in today. A mother in the southern part of Cameroon, or eastern part of Cameroon, or northern part of Cameroon needs a solution that is tailored to our challenges. They are losing food. They are losing their cocoyams. They are losing their bananas. They need something that can be able to dry their rice, dry their vegetables. And that then means that for that to happen, we need to tap into the ingenuity and the innovativeness of people in that area or in that country to devise those solutions. And what the young people need is just guidance, what I call structured guidance. That's what innovative volunteerism is all about. And more importantly, in East Africa, we've demonstrated it. In Cameroon, as we speak today, we are working with young people in Yaoundé, in Betua, in Gandere, in Jakiri, in North Africa, northern part of the country, to develop simple solar dryers that are actually helping to turn post-harvest losses. We're also working with young people who are turning agricultural waste in Cameroon into fuel briquettes. Because as we're speaking today, if you take Cameroon for example, I'm just using that for example,
yes.
Every year, Cameroon is actually having over 7,000 deaths as a result of depending on charcoal, which is causing indoor pollution.
Yes.
But to replace that charcoal with simple fuel briquettes that young people are now starting to turn agricultural waste to do, that will create jobs for the youth, that will reduce a health problem, and that will contribute to Cameroon's climate action solutions. That is happening in East Africa, that is happening in West Africa, and that is happening across Africa. So the point I'm trying to make is we do not need to always look for solutions that do not exist. We need to tap into what is already working and do exist within the continent. That's how we can drive transformational development.
So many of the youths across the African continent, they keep complaining that, the favorite or the conducive environment is not there for them to do what you are, preaching or trying to, motivate them to do.
The narrative, I have said this and I've argued about this so many times. There is profound power in a narrative. When the narrative is that it has to be done for you, you will then focus on a narrative that it has to be done for you. And that is what for over 60 years since Africa got independence, narrative has never been about solutions. It's been mostly about problems. It's not been about people themselves being the solutions or they've been the frontiers of transformation. It's been that people need to be given. And the language that people need to become the solutions to the challenges they face has not been there. And I think that has actually sunk deep into the society. So we need a narrative change from waiting for solutions to be provided to becoming the solutions provided that are needed. And that is what we need. And let me just say this, especially to the young people. What I've actually seen working with the young people is that their energy, their ingenuity, their innovativeness is underestimated. And sometimes they need just to be given the opportunity. And that opportunity is not necessarily only in terms of money, but appreciating what they can do, inspiring them, because what I've seen as the biggest missing link is the inspiration gap, that people can be inspired to usher themselves to action, that they need to be guided. And that guidance sometimes is missing. And the narrative has always been, we have problems, we don't have jobs, nobody is talking about in problems there are opportunities. We need to retool youth skills so that at least they can become the solutions provider. And in those challenges are opportunities, and those challenges present jobs. So changing the narrative and guiding youth is what we need at the moment. And at the same time, the young people should know that the challenges of Africa are these guys' opportunities. And without tapping into them, others will tap and they will be missing.
Okay, Doctor, how can these concepts help solve the problem of bad governance, poverty, and hunger in the entire African continent?
The reality is that if you look at the problems of Africa today, they are not only unique to Africa. Asia have problems of poverty, of food insecurity, of youth unemployment. Latin America do have the same problem, but the magnitude do differ.
Yes.
But the difference is that the solutions to the problems of Asia are not being fetched from elsewhere. They are fetched from within that continent. The solutions of Africa's problem today need to be fetched from within Africa. And those solutions need to be tied down to one word, socio-economic. Because if you tell a hungry child that you gave him or her food yesterday, that means nothing to that child. That child at that moment is hungry and he or she needs food. What do I mean by this? The best governance is socio-economics. And that will not come through talk alone. It will not come through anger. It will come through engaging each and everyone to ensure that he or she can become part and parcel, can do something that can help put food on the table and more money in more pockets. And how can it be done? It can only be done by engaging communities and ensuring that we build on what those communities are doing and leverage on what has worked, not what has not worked, because we tend to focus on mostly what has not worked, but rather than let me take a model in a community where they engage in communal cooperatives, jangis, which we all grew up knowing in Cameroon.
And that's what sent some of us to school. What sent some of us to school, yeah.
Exactly. It sent some of us to school. It contributed to buy that bench in church or in school. And during festive seasons like Christmas, we could see them picking their jangi. So the point is, we must build on structures that have worked. And the ultimate intent is to use those social structures like communal cooperatives, engage young people so they can start to assess little capital and do what is addressing the community problem. Develop a solar dryer that can help a mother in a village dry her food to reduce post-harvest losses. Start to turn waste to fuel briquettes that can then be able to replace charcoal. These are economic opportunities. So the point I'm making is, when people cannot put food on the table, they are hungry. And when they are hungry, they will tend to look for any means to get what they can get. And when they end up having what they can get, there is no way you can have good governance. Good governance doesn't come only through elections or through political positions. Good governance is about doing right and helping create an opportunity that can benefit millions of people. That's the kind of thinking we need to have.
And people getting what they deserve as well. People getting what they deserve. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that culture of ensuring that people engage in actions that can help put food on the table and more money in more pockets, and if everyone in the community benefits as a result of everyone contributing to transformational development, automatically good governance will start to be ingrained in everyone's lifeblood. Automatically, people will know that if I work hard, I will make it. Automatically, the entire society will be self-sufficient, and there will be no need for what we are seeing today, where others look and seem as if they are disenfranchised, which in reality is true because there are less opportunities, where we will then now start to have more opportunities for each and every one. But unless we look at this system thinking approach that everybody is important, regardless of where you come from across the entire African continent or even country, and that we all need one another to contribute in solving the problems we have. And regardless of what you do, whether you're a journalist or a climate scientist like myself, we are all playing a part. And collectively, that then results to transformational development. With that, focusing at socio-economic opportunities and only focusing on politics and governance, that cannot on its own happen without us trying to do what can put food on the table and more money in more pockets.
Doctor, many years ago, like 50 years ago, some of the countries that are emerging economies today, they were like Cameroon, and sometimes, what we tend to blame the underdevelopment of the African continent on our educational system. Don't you think that we need to review our educational system, what has worked and what has not worked in Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kingsley. Very important point you brought up. I have argued that Africa needs an education revolution, and rightly so, because if you look at the educational structure and curriculum of the continent, across the entire continent today, there is a big mismatch. You cannot have an education curriculum that is more just theoretical and worse, not aligning to the solutions that the continent needs today. Africa, when I started off, I said 257 million people go to bed hungry. We have 48 billion US dollars being lost as a result of post-harvest losses due to inefficiency in the agro system. Our education system is not tailored in providing solutions or in helping students and young people to devise those solutions so they can tap in turning these challenges to opportunities. That's a mismatch. We're talking about indoor pollution that kills over 700,000 people across the continent. These are not mere statistics, these are human beings. And in Cameroon, 7,000 people each and every year. How about education curriculum tailored to start devising solutions so that the youth coming out of school, young people coming out, can start to develop biogas to turn waste to opportunities, to turn waste to biofertilizer. So the mismatch of Africa's education needs a total revamping and overhaul, so that at least it can be tailored to start providing solutions rather than only talking about problems without necessarily equipping the very citizens who are supposed to be the custodians to address the challenges we face. So it's an urgent necessity.
Okay, Doctor, during my research, I equally found out that the way you perceive politics is quite different from the way many people see and do it in Africa. And you are equally worried about the fact that in Africa, policies in most countries are not often separated from politics.
When you look across the entire African continent today, and I have argued this so many times, politics is a conduit. For what? For policy. So I talk policy, not politics. You do not talk about a means as if it is an end. Politics is not an end. It is a means to an end. And what is that means? What is that end? The end is to ensure transformational development. Because what is more important today is policy, because policy is the biggest driver of change. Policy for agricultural transformation, policy for industrialization. But when we focus on the politics, which is more about the talk, not the action, then we miss the point. So what I have argued and I have written about and I still talk about today is that if we look at policy, which is what is transformational and can touch people's lives, and then start to engage as stakeholders, citizens, and ensure that at least we make sure that that policy gets implemented, it will touch many people's lives positively, rather than only concentrating in talking about how people can be elected, how people need to be given another term in office, whereas we forget about the policy that needs to be turned into reality to touch other people's lives. And the reality is that if we continuously overlook policy and overlook implementation. Politics will continue to be that space that our focus will be in, but the reality will be that the poverty, the impoverishment will continue to get bigger and bigger. The space and the gap will continue to get widened. And so we need to start looking at policy and looking at citizens as the custodians to implement that policy. And the other aspect is that we do not necessarily need to talk about government only from politics perspective, because people will say politics is bad. Of course, yes, politics is bad, but who are those who elect those people into those positions? So what I'm trying to bring about is that there is an ingredient in society that will keep missing, and that ingredient is values. We need to start instilling the value of selflessness. It's something that is not even talked about. Selflessness, to be able to do that, which can benefit many people. We need collectivism that we can work together to address challenges, and we need this aspect of passion. People need to become passionate in whatever thing they do, not only because it benefits them, but because it's supposed to benefit many people in the community.
Doctor, many have argued that the reason why you are saying what you're saying, talking about policies and politics not being separated, is because of the lack of strong institutions, that the institutions that are supposed to be powerful for accountability, they are not there in Africa. Reason why the policies are never really implemented, because nobody is accountable for whatever thing they do in Africa.
Actually, I've argued that Africa have 5 eyes. The first eye is the first and second eye is what we miss, and the 3 eyes are what we have. Africa doesn't lack ideas. Africa doesn't lack innovations. Those are the first 2 eyes. We don't lack those. But what we are missing is incentives. What is incentives? Incentives is not just money. Incentives is also inspiration, that people can be inspired to know that at least they can do something to benefit the community, that they can be given the opportunity, and that if they excel, they can be applauded. Institutions, Africa doesn't lack institutions. I would say Africa have institutions that do not work for the purposes in which they intended to or created to do. And the other one is implementation. So let's focus on institutions. Institutions are people. They are not buildings. And where do people come from? From the very society in which we are in. It goes back to what I say. If we do not start to nurture values of selflessness, values of humility, values of respect, values of hard work, that we can then be able to start cultivating this from our homes. Because the people who are in these institutions do not come from space, neither do they come from Jupiter. They come from the very society and even from our homes. There, some of them are relatives. So the point is, when we see an appointment today, somebody appointed, we clap because the person has been appointed. Do we also clap when the person is not delivering, or when the person is delivering? We forget that. We clap and then 20 minutes we forget. So what I'm trying to say is that society have contributed to the problems we have today. And unless we start collectively as a society to start addressing this mismatch that we have created and put in place, we will end up having institutions that do not work for the purposes in which they were created, and only continuously go down this path in which we are going down. So what do we need to do? One thing, we must reshape and change the way and the way we engage with one another, starting from our homes, to start instilling values of selflessness, values of kindness, values of humility, values of hard work, and knowing that when we do what we do, it's beyond us, and we must do it for the collective benefit of others.
You work for an institution where there is strict respect of policy or rules. And from your experience, what can you tell the young people in or across the African continent today so they can excel like you in the future?
Well, I was born in the northwestern part of Cameroon to a family of 5, and my parents were just as impoverished as many parents across the country and the continent. So I was not born into wealth or riches. I went to school without shoes, like many of us across the continent have done. So there is really nothing exceptional about what I am saying. But what I am bringing this up is that everybody have got potential, regardless of where you come from. It doesn't really matter. When I was growing up, we were taught lessons of humility and respect, lessons of hard work and discipline. Self-discipline is what makes the difference. It doesn't really matter where you come from. If you are disciplined to do that which is needed, and respect and work hard, you will succeed. But more importantly, to excel, you must not only be in organizations that are higher up in the world. That's what I've learned. you can excel in anything you do. Even if you are a shoe mender, do those shoes so nicely that somebody who actually engages with you start to see your passion. Nurture passion. I have argued so many times that if you are not passionate, you miss opportunities. A passionate person is unstoppable. Glue in everything you do. Give your best, and you will notice that people will start recommending you to places that you did not even expect. And that goes back to that word values that I mentioned. That we should give our best and be selfless in what we do. But more importantly, when you are given an assignment, you must be able to set a standard. And I really like to emphasize on this because we don't ask ourselves, what is my standard? We always ask ourselves, we always try to grade other people on standards in which we don't even live up to. And there is this story that was told that there is a guy, a carpenter, who was working, and then he came and told his boss that he was leaving the job. And the boss said, okay, since you are leaving, I am going to allow you to build this house. When that carpenter went to build that, what did he do? He used poor nails, he didn't give his best. At the end of the day, he handed the keys to the employer. What did the employer do? He said, this was your house. Unfortunately, the carpenter was regretting which he or she could have given his best. Why am I bringing up this story? Sometimes we don't give our best because we think we are doing something for someone else. But we should give our best and give everything we have because what you are actually doing represents you. And that's your legacy in everything that you can do if you give your best.
Dr. Richard Munang, thank you so much for taking out time to be part of this edition of The Agenda. We are glad you honored our invitation despite the very strict and lengthy procedure to get you. You work for the United Nations and you are based in Nairobi, Kenya.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
BT Media is getting better, going further with clearer images.